The Smashing Pumpkins are an American alternative rock band from Chicago, Illinois, created in 1988. Formed by frontman Billy Corgan and James Ear, the band has included Jimmy Chamberlin, Darcy Ritsky, Melissa Off Der Mum, and currently includes Nicole Fiorentino and Jeff Schroeder among its membership. Disavowing the punk rock roots of many of their alt-rock contemporaries, the Pumpkins have a diverse, densely layered, and guitar-heavy sound, containing elements of gothic rock, heavy metal, dream pop, psychedelic rock, progressive rock, shoegazing, and electronica in later recordings. Corgan is the group's primary songwriter. His grand musical ambitions and cathartic lyrics have shaped the band's albums and songs, which have been described as anguished, bruised. Reports from Billy Corgan's Nightmare Land. The Smashing Pumpkins broke into the musical mainstream with their second album, 1993's Siamese Dream. The group built its audience with extensive touring and their 1995 follow-up, the double album Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, which debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 album chart. With 20 million albums sold in the United States alone, the Smashing Pumpkins was one of the most commercially successful and critically acclaimed bands of the 1990s. However, internal fighting, drug use, and diminishing record sales led to a 2000 breakup. In 2006, Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin reconvened to record a new Smashing Pumpkins album, Zeitgeist. The band toured with a rotating lineup of between 5 and 9 musicians through much of 2007 and 2008 with new member Jeff Schroeder before Chamberlin left the band in early 2009. New drummer Mike Byrne and bassist Nicole Fiorentino solidified a new lineup with Corgan and Schroeder, toured through much of 2010 and 2011, and are currently recording the album Tiergarten by Kaleidoscope, having released the album within an album Oceania in 2012. On March 25, 2014, Corgan announced the next 2 albums, Monuments to an Elegy and Day for Night, will be released in 2015. History, Early Years, 1988 to 1991. After the breakup of his gothic rock band The Marked, singer and guitarist Billy Corgan left St. Petersburg, Florida, to return to his native city of Chicago, where he took a job in a record store and hatched the idea of a new band that would be called the Smashing Pumpkins. While working there, he met guitarist James Ear. Adorning themselves with paisley and other psychedelic trappings, the two began writing songs together that were heavily influenced by The Cure and New Order. The duo performed live for the first time on July 9, 1988 at the Polish bar Chicago 21. This performance included only Corgan on bass and Ear on guitar with a drum machine. Shortly thereafter, Corgan met Darcy Ritsky after a show by the Dan Reed Network where they argued the merits of the band. After finding out Ritsky played bass guitar, Corgan recruited her into the lineup and the now trio played a show at the Avalon nightclub. After this show, Cabaret Metro owner Joe Shanahan agreed to book the band on the condition that they replace the drum machine with a live drummer. Jazz drummer Jimmy Chamberlin was recommended by a friend of Corgan's. Chamberlin knew little of alternative music and immediately changed the sound of the nascent band. As Corgan recalled of the period, "We were completely into the sad rock, Cure kind of thing. It took about 2 or 3 practices before I realized that the power in his playing was something that enabled us to rock harder than we could ever have imagined." On October 5, 1988, the complete band took the stage for the first time at the Cabaret Metro. In 1989, the Smashing Pumpkins made their first appearance on record with the compilation album Light into Dark, which featured several Chicago alternative bands. The group released its first single, I Am One, in 1990 on local Chicago label Limited Potential. The single sold out and they released a follow-up, Tristessa, on Sub Pop, after which they signed to Caroline Records. The band recorded their 1991 debut studio album Gish with producer Butch Vig at his Smart Studios in Madison, Wisconsin for $20,000. In order to gain the consistency he desired, Corgan often played all instruments save drums, which created tension in the band. The music fused heavy metal guitars, psychedelia, and dream pop, garnering them comparisons to Jane's Addiction. Gish became a minor success, with the single Rhinoceros receiving some airplay on modern rock radio. After releasing the Lull EP in October 1991 on Caroline Records, the band formally signed with Virgin Records, which was affiliated with Caroline. The band supported the album with a tour that included opening for bands such as the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction, and Guns N' Roses. During the tour, Ia and Ritsky went through a messy breakup, Chamberlin became addicted to narcotics and alcohol, and Corgan entered a deep depression, writing some songs for the upcoming album in the parking garage where he lived at the time. Mainstream success, 1992–1994, with the breakthrough of alternative rock into the American mainstream due to the popularity of grunge bands such as Nirvana and Pearl Jam, the Smashing Pumpkins were poised for major commercial success. At this time, the Pumpkins were routinely lumped in with the grunge movement, with Corgan protesting, "We've graduated now from being called the next Jane's Addiction to the next Nirvana, now we're the next Pearl Jam." Amid this environment of intense internal pressure for the band to break through to widespread popularity, the band relocated to Marietta, Georgia in late 1992 to begin work on their second album, with Butch Vig returning as producer. The decision to record so far away from their hometown was motivated partly by the band's desire to avoid friends and distractions during the recording, but largely as a desperate attempt to cut Chamberlin off from his known drug connections. The recording environment for Siamese Dream was quickly marred by discord within the band. As was the case with Gish, Corgan and Vig decided that Corgan should play nearly all of the guitar and bass parts on the album, contributing to an air of resentment. The contemporary music press began to portray Corgan as a tyrant. Corgan's depression, meanwhile, had deepened to the point where he contemplated suicide, and he compensated by practically living in the studio. Meanwhile, Chamberlin quickly managed to find new connections and was often absent without any contact for days at a time. In all, it took over 4 months to complete the record, with the budget exceeding $250,000. Despite all the problems in its recording, Siamese Dream debuted at number 10 on the Billboard 200 chart, and sold over 4 million copies in the US alone. Alongside the band's mounting mainstream recognition, the band's reputation as careerists among their former peers in the independent music community was worsened. Indie rock band Pavement's 1994 song Range Life directly mocks the band in its lyrics, although Stephen Michmas, lead singer of Pavement, has stated, "I never dissed their music. I just dissed their status." Former Ha 1/4 Skadar 1/4 frontman Bob Mould called them the grunge monkeys, and fellow Chicago musician-producer Steve Albini wrote a scathing letter in response to an article praising the band, derisively comparing them to REO Speedwagon and concluding their ultimate insignificance. The opening track and lead single of Siamese Dream, Cherub Rock, directly addresses Corgan's feud with the indie world. In 1994, Virgin released the B-Sides Rarities compilation Pisces Iscariot, which charted higher than Siamese Dream by reaching number 4 on the Billboard 200. Also released was a VHS cassette titled Euphoria featuring a mix of live performances and behind-the-scenes footage. Following relentless touring to support the recordings, including headline slots on the 1994 Lollapalooza tour and at Reading Festival in 1995, the band took time off to write the follow-up album. Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, 1995–1997, Corgan worked non-stop over the next year and wrote about 56 songs for the next album. Following this spell of concentrated creativity, the Pumpkins went back into the studio with producers Flood and Alan Moulder to work on what Corgan described as the Wall for Generation X, a comparison with the 1979 Pink Floyd 2-LP concept album. The result was Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, a double album featuring 28 songs and lasting over 2 hours. The songs were intended to hang together conceptually as a symbol of the cycle of life and death. Praised by Time as the group's most ambitious and accomplished work yet, Melancholy debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 in October 1995. Even more successful than Siamese Dream, it was certified 10 times platinum in the United States and became the best-selling double album of the decade to date. It also garnered 7 1997 Grammy Award nominations, including Album of the Year. the band won only the Best Hard Rock Performance Award, for the album's lead single Bullet with Butterfly Wings. The album spawned 5 singles: Bullet with Butterfly Wings, 1979, Zero, Tonight, Tonight, and 33, of which the first 3 were certified gold and all but 0 entered the top 40. Many of the remaining songs that did not make it onto Melancholy were released as B-sides to the singles, and were eventually compiled in the Aeroplane Flies High box set. As a testament to the band's popularity, Virgin Records originally intended to limit the set to 200,000 copies, but produced more after the original run sold out due to overwhelming demand. In 1996, the Pumpkins embarked on an extended world tour in support of Melancholy. Corgan's look during this period: a shaved head, a long-sleeved black shirt with the word Zero printed on it, and silver pants became iconic. That year, the band also made a guest appearance in an episode of The Simpsons, Homerpalooza. With considerable video rotation on MTV, major industry awards, and Zero shirts selling in many malls, the Pumpkins were considered one of the most popular bands of the time. But the year was far from entirely positive for the band. In May, the Smashing Pumpkins played a gig at the Point Theatre in Dublin, Ireland. Despite the band's repeated requests for moshing to stop, a 17-year-old fan named Bernadette O'Brien was crushed to death. The concert ended early and the following night's performance in Belfast was cancelled out of respect for her. However, while Corgan maintained that moshing's time had come and gone, the band would continue to request open-floor concerts throughout the rest of the tour. The band suffered a personal tragedy on the night of July 11, 1996, when touring keyboardist Jonathan Melvoin and Chamberlin overdosed on heroin in a hotel room in New York City. Melvoin died, and Chamberlin was arrested for drug possession. A few days later, the band announced that Chamberlin had been fired as a result of the incident. The Pumpkins chose to finish the tour, and hired drummer Matt Walker and keyboardist Dennis Flemin. Corgan later said the decision to continue touring was the worst decision the band had ever made, damaging both their music and their reputation. Chamberlin admitted in a 1994 Rolling Stone cover story that in the past he'd gotten high in every city in this country and probably half the cities in Europe. But in recent years, he had reportedly been clean. On July 17, the Pumpkins issued a statement in which they said, "For 9 years we have battled with Jimmy's struggles with the insidious disease of drug and alcohol addiction. It has nearly destroyed everything we are and stand for. We wish him the best we have to offer." Meanwhile, the band had given interviews since the release of Melancholy stating that it would be the last conventional Pumpkins record, and that rock was becoming stale. James Dio said at the end of 1996, "The future is in electronic music. It really seems boring just to play rock music." Adore, Machina, and Break Up, 1998 to 2000, after the release of Melancholy, the Pumpkins contributed multiple songs to various compilations. Released in early 1997, the song I, which appeared on the soundtrack to David Lynch's Lost Highway, relied almost exclusively on electronic instruments and signaled a drastic shift from the Pumpkins' unregistered trademark previous musical styles. At the time, Corgan stated his idea was to reconfigure the focus and get away from the classic guitars-based drum rock format. Later that year, the group contributed The End Is the Beginning as the end to the soundtrack for the film Batman and Robin. With Matt Walker on drums, the song featured a heavy sound similar to Bullet with Butterfly Wings while still having strong electronic influences. The song later won the 1998 Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance. Though Corgan announced that the song represented the sound people could expect from the band in the future, the band's unregistered trademark's next album would feature few guitar-driven songs. Recorded following the death of Corgan's mother and his divorce, 1998's Adore represented a significant change of style from the Pumpkins' previous guitar-based rock, veering into electronica. The record, cut with assistance from drum machines and studio drummers including Matt Walker, was infused with a darker aesthetic than much of the band's earlier work. The group also modified its public image, shedding its alternative hipster look for a more subdued appearance. Although Adore received favorable reviews and was nominated for Best Alternative Performance at the Grammy Awards, the album had only sold about 830,000 copies in the United States by the end of the year, which led the music industry to consider it a failure. The album nonetheless sold 3 times as many copies overseas. The band embarked on a 17-date, 15-city charity North American tour in support of Adore. At each stop on the tour, the band donated 100% of ticket sales to a local charity organization. The tour's expenses were entirely funded out of the band's own pockets. All told, the band donated over $2.8 million to charity as a result of the tour. In 1999, the band surprised fans by reuniting with the rehabilitated Jimmy Chamberlin for a brief tour dubbed The Arising, which showcased both new and classic material. The lineup was short-lived, however. The band announced the departure of Ritsky in September during work on the album Machina the Machines of God. Former Hole bassist Melissa Auf der Mar was recruited for the Sacred and Profane tour in support of the album and appeared in the videos accompanying its release. Released in 2000, Machina was initially promoted as the Pumpkins' return to a more traditional rock sound, after the more gothic, electronic-sounding Adore. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard charts, but quickly disappeared and as of 2007 had only been certified gold. Music journalist Jim DeRogatis, who described the album as one of the strongest of their career, noted that the stalled sales for Machina in comparison to teen pop ascendant at the time seems like concrete proof that a new wave of young pop fans has turned a deaf ear toward alternative rock. On May 23, 2000, in a live radio interview on KROQ-FM, Billy Corgan announced the band's decision to break up at the end of that year following additional touring and recording. The group's final album before the breakup, Machina to the Friends and Enemies of Modern Music, was released in September 2000 in a limited pressing on vinyl with permission and instructions for free redistribution on the Internet by fans. Only 25 copies were cut, each of which was hand-numbered and given to friends of the band along with band members themselves. The album, released under the Constantinople Records label created by Corgan, consisted of 1 double LP and 3 10-inch EPs. Originally, the band asked Virgin to offer Machina 2 as a free download to anyone who bought Machina. When the record label declined, Corgan opted to release the material independently. On December 2, 2000, Smashing Pumpkins played a farewell concert at the Metro, the same Chicago club where their career had effectively started 12 years earlier. The 4.5-hour-long show featured 35 songs spanning the group's career, and attendees were given a recording of the band unregistered trademark's first concert at the Metro, Live at Cabaret Metro October 5, 1988. The single Untitled was released commercially to coincide with the farewell show. Post-breakup, 2001 2004. In 2001, the compilation Rotten Apples was released. The double-disc version of the album, released as a limited edition, included a collection of B-sides and rarities called Judas O. The Greatest Hits Video Collection DVD was also released at the same time. This was a compilation of all of the Pumpkins' promo videos from Gish to Machina along with unreleased material. Euphoria was released on DVD in 2002, as was the soundtrack album Euphoria, previously released solely to radio stations in 1994. Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin reunited in 2001 as members of Corgan's next project, the short-lived supergroup Zin. The group's only album, Mary Star of the Sea, was released in 2003. After cancelling a few festival appearances, Corgan announced the demise of the band in 2003. During 2001, Corgan also toured as part of New Order and provided vocals on their comeback album Get Ready. In October 2004, Corgan released his first book, Blinking with Fists, a collection of poetry. In June 2005, he released a solo album, The Future Embrace, which he described as, picking up the thread of the as of yet unfinished work of the Smashing Pumpkins. Despite this, it was greeted with generally mixed reviews and lackluster sales. Only one single, Walking Shade, was released in support of the album. In addition to drumming with Zin, Jimmy Chamberlin also formed an alternative rock jazz fusion project band called the Jimmy Chamberlin Complex. the group released an album in 2005 titled Life Begins Again. Corgan provided guest vocals on the track Lokicat. James Ear served as a guitarist in A Perfect Circle, appearing on their 13th Step Club tour and 2004 album, Emotive. He has also been involved with other acts such as Chino Marino's Team Sleep and Vanessa and the O's. He continues to work with his own record label as well, Scratchy Records. Desi Ritsky has, aside from one radio interview in 2009, not made any public statements or appearances nor given any interviews since leaving the band in 1999. On January 25, 2000, she was arrested after she allegedly purchased 3 bags of crack cocaine, but after successfully completing a court-ordered drug education program, the charges were dropped. Corgan insisted during this period that the band would not reform, although when some broke up he announced, "I think my heart was in Smashing Pumpkins. I think it was naive of me to think that I could find something that would mean as much to me." Corgan said in 2005, "I never wanted to leave the Smashing Pumpkins. That was never the plan." On February 17, 2004, Corgan posted a message on his personal blog calling Ritsky a mean-spirited drug addict, and blaming Ear for the breakup of the Smashing Pumpkins. On June 3, 2004, he added that the depth of my hurt from Ear is only matched with the depth of my gratitude. Ear responded to Corgan's claims in 2005, saying, "No, I didn't break up the band. The only person who could have done that is Billy." Reformation and Zeitgeist, 2005 Euro 2008. On June 21, 2005, the day of the release of his album The Future Embrace, Corgan took out full-page advertisements in the Chicago Tribune and Chicago Sun-Times to announce that he planned to reunite the band. For a year now, Corgan wrote, "I have walked around with a secret I chose to keep. But now I want you to be among the first to know that I have made plans to renew and revive the Smashing Pumpkins. I want my band back, and my songs, and my dreams." Corgan and Chamberlin were verified as participants in the reunion, but there was question as to whether other former members of the band would participate. In April 2007, Ear and Off Dare more separately confirmed that they were not taking part in the reunion. Chamberlin would later state that Ear and Ritsky didn't want to be a part of the reunion. The Smashing Pumpkins performed live for the first time since 2000 on May 22, 2007, in Paris, France. There, the band unveiled new touring members, guitarist Jeff Schroeder, bassist Ginger Reyes, and keyboardist Lisa Harriton. That same month, Tarantula was released as the first single from the band's forthcoming album. On July 7, the band performed at the Live Earth concert in New Jersey. The band's new album, Zeitgeist, was released that same month on Reprise Records, entering the Billboard charts at number 2 and selling 145,000 copies in its first week. Zeitgeist received mixed reviews, with much of the criticism targeted at the absence of half of the original lineup. The album divided the Pumpkins fanbase. Corgan would later admit, "I know a lot of our fans are puzzled by Zeitgeist. I think they wanted this massive, grandiose work, but you don't just roll out of bed after 7 years without a functioning band and go back to doing that." Corgan and Chamberlin continued to record as a duo, releasing the 4-song EP American Gothic in January 2008 and the singles Super Triste and GLOW later that year. That November, the group released the DVD If All Goes Wrong, which chronicled the group's 2007 concert residencies in Asheville, North Carolina and San Francisco, California. In late 2008, the band embarked on a controversy-riddled 20th anniversary tour. Around this time, Corgan said the group will make no more full-length records in order to focus exclusively on singles, explaining, "The listening patterns have changed, so why are we killing ourselves to do albums, to create balance, and do the arty track to set up the single? It's done." Tiergarten and Oceania, 2009 Euro 2013. In March 2009, Corgan announced on the band's website that Chamberlin had left the group and would be replaced. Chamberlin subsequently stated that his departure from the band is a positive move forward for me. "I can no longer commit all of my energy into something that I don't fully possess." Chamberlin stressed that the split was amicable, commenting, "I am glad Corgan has chosen to continue under the name. It is his right." Chamberlin soon formed the band Schizoid, which has released an album and toured in support of Minus the Bear. In July 2009, Billy Corgan formed a new group called Spirits in the Sky, initially as a tribute band to Sky Saxon of the Seeds, who had recently passed away. The following month Corgan confirmed on the band's website that 19-year-old Spirits in the Sky drummer Mike Byrne had replaced Chamberlin and that the pair was working on new Pumpkins recordings. The group announced plans to release a 44-track concept album, Teargarden by Kaleidoscope, for free over the internet, one track at a time. The first track, A Song for a Son, was released in December 2009 to moderate press acclaim. In March 2010, Ginger Reyes officially left the band, prompting an open call for auditions for a new bassist. In May, Nicole Fiorentino announced she had joined the band as bass player, and would be working on Teargarden by Kaleidoscope. The new lineup went on a world tour through to the end of 2010. One of the first shows with the new lineup was a concert to benefit Matthew Leone, bassist for the rock band Medina Lake, at the Metro on July 27, 2010. In late 2010, all four members contributed to the sessions for the third volume of Teargarden. On April 26, 2011, Corgan announced that the Smashing Pumpkins would be releasing a new album titled Oceania, which he labeled as an album within an album in regards to the Teargarden by Kaleidoscope project, in the fall. As with the previous recording sessions, all four band members contributed to the project. Also, the entire album catalogue was to be remastered and reissued with bonus tracks, starting with Gish and Siamese Dream in November 2011. The pre-Gish demos, Pisces Iscariot, and Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness were released in 2012, with The Aeroplane Flies High being released the following year. Adore will be released in 2014, while Machina the Machines of God and the yet commercially unreleased Machina 2 Friends and Enemies of Modern Music are expected to be combined, remixed, and released in the same year. The band did a 13-city US tour in October 2011, followed by a European tour in November and December. Oceania was released on June 19, 2012 and received generally positive reviews. The album debuted at No. 4 on the Billboard 200 and at No. 1 on the Billboard Independent. The album spawned two singles, The Celestials, and Panopticon. The band proceeded to tour in support of the album, including a US tour involving playing the album in its entirety. By September 2012, Corgan stated that the band had already begun work on their next album. However, despite this, the band concentrated on touring, playing at Glastonbury Festival, Tour Festival and the Barclays Centre, where they recorded Oceania, Live in NYC, which was released on September 24, 2013, without much comment on new material. Monuments to an Elegy and Day for Night, 2014 a Euro present. In September 2013, Corgan stated he was commencing work on a pair of albums, though did not clarify whether or not either were Smashing Pumpkins material. On February 5, 2014, he confirmed he was writing new Smashing Pumpkins material. On March 25, 2014, Corgan announced he had signed a new record deal with BMG, for two albums coming out in 2015, titled Monuments to an Elegy and Day for Night, respectively. Since the announcement, Corgan has been making daily updates on the progress of the writing, demoing, and recording of new songs on the band's new website, the Panopticon. On May 8, 2014, Corgan announced that Tommy Lee, of Ma Paragraphed Lee Kra 1/4 E, would be playing drums on Monuments to an Elegy. In June, it was revealed that Mike Byrne was no longer in the band, and Fiorentino would not be recording on the album either, though she was still open to touring in support of it. On July 21, 2014, Corgan announced that recording for Monuments to an Elegy was complete, and that only mixing, which he announced would commence on August 18, 2014, was left to be done, also commenting that he hopes for a single to be released from the album sometime in October, and for the album itself to be released sometime in December. As well, he commented that the early stages of writing for the band's next album, Day for Night, would begin immediately as work on Monuments to an Elegy was complete. Musical style, influences, and legacy. The direction of the band is dominated by chief guitarist, lead vocalist, and principal songwriter Billy Corgan. Journalist Greg Kot wrote, "The music of the Smashing Pumpkins would not be what it is without his ambition and vision, and his famously fractured relationships with his family, friends, and band members." Melissa Ofdermock commented upon news of the group's reunion, "Everyone knows Billy doesn't need too many people to make a Pumpkins record, other than Jimmy Euro, who he has on board." Many of Corgan's lyrics for the Pumpkins are cathartic expressions of emotion, full of personal musings and strong indictments of himself and those close to him. Music critics were not often fans of Corgan's angst-filled lyrics. Jim DeRogatis wrote in a 1993 Chicago Sun-Times article that Corgan's lyrics too often sound like sophomoric poetry, although he viewed the lyrics of later albums Adorn Machina as an improvement. Corgan responded to DeRogatis' words with "Fuck the Sun-Times" at the band's 1993 show at the Metro Chicago. The Smashing Pumpkins' distinctive sound up until Adore involved layering numerous guitar tracks onto a song during the recording process, a tactic that Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness co-producer Flood called the Pumpkin Guitar Overdue Army. There were a few overdubbed parts on Gish, but Corgan began to really explore the possibilities of overdubbing with Siamese Dream. Corgan has stated that Soma alone contains up to 40 overdubbed guitar parts. While Corgan knew many of the songs would be difficult or impossible to replicate from their recorded versions in concert, he has explained the use of overdubbing by posing the question, when you are faced with making a permanent recorded representation of a song, why not endow it with the grandest possible vision? This use of multi-layered sounds was inspired by Corgan's love of 1970s arena rock bands Queen, Boston, and Electric Light Orchestra, as well as shoegaze, a British alternative rock style of the late 1980s and early 1990s that relied on swelling layers of guitar noise for effect. Melancholy co-producer Alan Moulder was originally hired to mix Siamese Dream because Corgan was a fan of his work producing shoegaze bands such as My Bloody Valentine, Ride, and Slowed. Like many contemporary alternative bands, the Smashing Pumpkins utilized shifts in song dynamics, going from quiet to loud and vice versa. Ha 1/4 Skadar 1/4's seminal album Zen Arcade demonstrated to the band how they could place gentler material against more aggressive fare, and Corgan made such shifts in dynamics central to the pursuit of his grand musical ambitions. Corgan said he liked the idea of creating his own alternative universe through sound that essentially tells the listener, "Welcome to Pumpkin Land, this is what it sounds like on Planet Pumpkin." This emphasis on atmosphere carried through to Adorn the Machina albums. The Pumpkins drew inspiration from a variety of other genres, some unfashionable during the 1990s among music critics. Corgan in particular was open about his appreciation of heavy metal, citing Dimebag Darrell of Pantera as his favorite contemporary guitarist. When one interviewer commented to Corgan and Ear that Smashing Pumpkins is one of the groups that re-legitimized heavy metal, and that they were among the first alternative rockers to mention people like Ozzy and Black Sabbath with anything other than contempt, Corgan went on to rave about Black Sabbath's Master of Reality and Judas Priest's Unleashed in the East. The song Zero, which reminded Ear of Judas Priest, is an example of what the band dubbed cyber metal. Post-punk and gothic rock bands like Joy Division, New Order, Bauhaus, The Cure, and Depeche Mode were formative influences on the band, which covered such artists in concert and on record. Psychedelic rock was also referenced often in the band's early recordings. According to Corgan, in typical Pumpkins fashion, no one at that point really liked loud guitars or psychedelic music, so, of course, that's exactly what we had to do. Corgan acknowledged that a chords he jokingly claimed as the pumpkin chord, used as the basis for Cherub Rock, Drown, and other songs, was in fact previously used by Jimi Hendrix. Other early influences cited by Corgan include Cream, The Stooges, and Blue Cheer. Regarding the band's influence upon other groups, Greg Kot wrote in 2001, "Whereas Nirvana spawned countless mini-Nirvanas, the Pumpkins remain an island unto themselves." Still, some artists and bands have mentioned the Pumpkins as an influence, such as Nelly Furtado and members of My Chemical Romance. My Chemical Romance vocalist Gerard Way has said that they pattern their career upon the Pumpkins, including music videos. The members of fellow Chicago band Kill Hannah are friends with Corgan, and lead singer Matt Devine has compared his group to the Pumpkins. Music videos. The Smashing Pumpkins have been praised for being responsible for some of the most striking and memorable video clips, and for having approached videos from a completely artistic standpoint rather than mere commercials to sell albums. MTV's 2001 anniversary special Testimony, 20 Years of Rock on MTV credited the Pumpkins, along with 9 Inch Nails, with treating music videos as an art form during the 1990s. Corgan has said, "We generally resisted the idea of what I call the classic MTV rock video, which is like lots of people jumping around and stuff." The band worked with video directors including Kevin Keshlake, Samuel Bayer, and, most frequently, the team of Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris. Corgan, who was frequently heavily involved in the conception of the videos, said of Dayton and Faris, "I know my initial versions are always darker, and they're always talking me into something a little kinder and gentler." Videos like Today, Rocket, and 1979 dealt with images taken from Middle American culture, albeit exaggerated. The group's videos so often avoid the literal interpretation of the song lyrics that the video for 33, with images closely related to the words of the song, was created as an intentional stylistic departure. The band was nominated for several MTV Video Music Awards during the 1990s. In 1996, the group won 7 VMAs total for the 1979, and Tonight videos, including the top award, Video of the Year, for Tonight. The video was also nominated for a Grammy at the 1997 ceremony. Fans reacted with equal fervor. Of the Tonight video, Corgan remarked, "I don't think we've ever had people react like this. It just seemed to touch a nerve." Shortly after the band's 2000 breakup, the Greatest Hits video collection was released, collecting the band's music videos from 1991 to 2000 and including commentary from Corgan, Chamberlin, Ritsky, and various music video directors with outtakes, live performances, and the Try extended short film. The band has also released several music videos to YouTube and other online sources since reuniting. Band members. Current members: Billy Corgan, a Euro lead vocals, guitar, keyboards; Jeff Schroeder, a Euro guitar, backing vocals; Nicole Fiorentino, a Euro bass guitar, backing vocals; former members: James Iha, a Euro guitar, backing vocals; Desi Ritsky, a Euro bass guitar, backing vocals; Jimmy Chamberlin, a Euro drums, percussion, backing vocals; Melissa Ofdermore, a Euro bass guitar, backing vocals; Lisa Harriton, a Euro keyboards, backing vocals; Ginger Pooley, a Euro bass guitar, backing vocals; Mike Byrne, a Euro drums, percussion, backing vocals. Discography. Studio albums: Gish, Siamese Dream, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, Adore, Machina, The Machines of God, Machina 2, The Friends and Enemies of Modern Music, Zeitgeist, Tiergarten by Kaleidoscope, Oceania, Monuments to an Elegy, Day for Night. See also, List of the Smashing Pumpkins band members, List of the Smashing Pumpkins awards and nominations, Timeline of alternative rock, footnotes. References. Azerrad, Michael. Smashing Pumpkins' Sudden Impact. Rolling Stone. PA 19, De Rogatis, Jim. Milk It. Collected Musings on the Alternative Music Explosion of the 90s. Da Capo. ISBN A0-306-81271-1. Elewine, Stephen Thomas. Prato, Greg. Biography. Olmasica, Cott, Greg. Pumpkin Seeds. Guitar World. Thompson, Dave. Alternative Rock. San Francisco, Miller Freeman, Incorporated. ISBN A0-87930-607-6. External links, official website, The Smashing Pumpkins at DMOZ, The Smashing Pumpkins at AllMusic.